It's the Security Weekly News, episode 173. Welcome to the week of 12, December 2021. We are back with Satoshi Nakamoto, Log4Shell, PayPal, PyPl, I don't know how you pronounce that, PYPL, Bad Bluetooth, Bad Google, Bad Elon, and Jason Wood on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Every 11 seconds, there's a new ransomware attack. Oil pipelines, universities, corporations, all paying millions of dollars. Barracuda says, don't pay the ransom. Before a ransomware attack occurs, train your teams to recognize an attack and use anti-phishing technology. Protect your applications, and they can't get onto your network. Simple backup and restore solutions quickly recover your data without paying the ransom. Build your ransomware protection plan now by visiting securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
All right, we're back from the week off and counting down the shows until the end of 2021, another plague year. This first story happened last week, but I did want to get it in. We weren't here. If you don't know the whole backstory, well, Dave Kleiman, who actually died in 2013, and Craig Wright, who is an Australian developer, angel investor, I don't know, depends on who you talk to, but Craig and Dave, I knew them a long time ago, vaguely. I wouldn't claim I knew them well, but I did know them in the forensics industry. And they did a lot of research in forensics and other cybersecurity stuff, especially back in kind of the early days. They got involved in, and the reason I knew them was they got involved in my famous feud with Dr. Gutman about wiping hard drives and proved me right. Thanks, Craig and Dave, wherever you are. But anyway, so there was this guy named Satoshi Nakamoto who reputedly invented Bitcoin, and reputedly owns this Bitcoin wallet that's sort of the holy grail of Bitcoin wallets that has 1.1 million Bitcoins, not dollars, but actual Bitcoin. So 1.1 million Bitcoins. So that's going to be like what, like $50 billion. And this supposedly belongs to Mr. Nakamoto. Now, the problem is nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto actually is. And so this has always been this sort of urban legend kind of stuff in cybersecurity and in the realm of cryptocurrency. So back in 2016, Craig Wright claimed that he was Satoshi Nakamoto. And, well, since Dave and Craig did lots of stuff together, well, my natural assumption would have been that they probably did Bitcoin together if this is actually true. So Dave Kleiman's family decided to sue Craig for half, I don't know actually what they asked for, but they wanted a cut of this Bitcoin wallet, essentially. Now, nobody has ever accessed this Bitcoin wallet, supposedly. It's just like out there. And, so it's entirely possible that Satoshi Nakamoto is actually D.B. Cooper or G. Gordon Liddy's step-grandson, or maybe just some guy named Bert from Left Yarble, Texas. But it is $50 billion, so of course there's a lawsuit. Now, some people in the industry think Craig is lying about the whole thing, but anyway, the trial went on. And Craig claimed that if he won the trial, he would prove his ownership of this Bitcoin wallet by making a transaction with it or something. And later actually said he would donate all the money, or at least a large portion of the money, to charity if he was proven right. Well, in the end, the jury deliberated about a week, and they awarded $100 million to Dave and Craig's company. So they took $100 million worth of something, and they put it into Dave's company so that Dave would actually get some of his family would actually get some of this money. Craig claimed that despite him and Dave working together, Dave was not involved in the Bitcoin operation. But Craig, like I said, he claimed he would donate all the money to charity if he wins. So we'll see what happens. He essentially won this lawsuit that they weren't entitled to half the Bitcoin wallet, but there was $100 million awarded to the company. So I guess Dave would get part of that, or Dave's estate. I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to bring it up. You've probably already heard or seen all sorts of memes about this, but Log4Shell is probably the biggest story that actually started last week. If you missed it, well, Apache is one of the largest web server daemons, and it has this bug in it that is called Log4j. And this is a library exploit that it's a logging library in Java that basically what happens is Java downloads a file and executes it as part of its sort of load operation. And if you can inject something into that file, it will cause that to execute locally on the host, and then you can do whatever you want. Now, the original vulnerability was released on December 1st or so, and it's called CVE 44228, and it was publicly disclosed last week. Now, the minute it was disclosed, attackers started attacking, and we have another story about that. But Sophos detected hundreds of thousands of attempts since December 9th focused on this vulnerability. Cloudflare reported that it may have been being openly exploited for weeks. The peak traffic on it was on 12 December, so right after it came out. So 12 December was Sunday. So the flaw is now being called the worst flaw of the year, or at least in the top 3, according to Dor Dolly at Vulcan Cyber. So Huntress Labs has a tool, which there's a link in the article, and it will test your systems for vulnerability. And Cybereason has released a vaccine tool for one of the variants, but apparently the variants are coming pretty fast and furious with this, worse than COVID. So this is a big deal. There's a long list of people in this article that are vulnerable to this as of Monday, which included Amazon, Apple, Baidu, Cloudflare, Steam, Tesla, Tencent, Twitter, VMware, WebEx, and there was a bunch of other ones. I'm not going to read them all. But basically, this was a big deal. So the flaw basically then, once this download happens, other instructions can be stuffed in there. And what has been typically happening is it's a dropper or some other kind of malware that gets pushed into this via this Log4Shell problem. So if you are running Apache web servers or you use sites that do, this is definitely worth your immediate attention, like now. But basically then, so the next article is an article from Checkpoint. They blocked 846,000 scans for Log4j vulnerabilities after it was disclosed. So it kind of, obviously people picked up on it. And they went on to say that sometimes 100 attempts to exploit the flaw were observed within a single minute, and that 40% of corporate networks have already been targeted with this. So it's definitely out there. Don't forget that if you have outward-facing HTML, so that means you might have Apache running on devices that have web interfaces or anything like that. So even if you're not running an actual web server, with a website, if you've got devices that have HTML-enabled tools, if they're running Apache, or some variant of Apache, they may well be vulnerable too. On Monday, Checkpoint said that in the last 24 hours, this is yesterday, more than 60 variations of this exploit were observed, and that high-level attackers were using HTTP, HTTPS, and other protocols to try and exploit this vulnerability. So yeah, it's bad. So if you definitely probably want to get a handle on this pretty quick. A malicious package in the Python package index repository has been found. Andrew Scott, who's an independent researcher, found this package while he was analyzing site-wide code in PyPl. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I know what it is, but I don't know is it PYPI, Pipey, Peepy? Oh dear, yeah, we probably don't want to call it that, but whatever it is, I'm sure however you want to say it, you can say it. But anyway, it's essentially, if you aren't familiar with it, it is essentially a GitHub type repository that contains Python packages. So it's heavily utilized. So when you get ready to sit down with PyCharm or some other tool to write like a Python application, you basically may be implementing libraries that are being downloaded, just like you would with GitHub, into your Python. So the package that he got very interested in was called Aws Login, and it's a tool that's out there as a package. It contained a known Trojan and 2 info stealers in this package. And remember, all of us have downloaded packages from GitHub and other places all the time. And when you put those things into your code, do you actually go in those libraries and dig through them and see what they're doing and how they work and what other libraries they call, or do you just try to get it working? I know what I've done, so it makes me nervous. 2 other packages that were on there were called DPP Client and DPP-Client 1234L, I think is what the last part of it. And they all had info stealers embedded in them. On 10 December, they removed the packages. But they are, if they're in your code already, then you may have to remove them and find some kind of substitute code to fix that problem. The DPP client package had already been downloaded more than 10,000 times, and the others were in the thousands. So, and this is how supply chain attacks work, right? I mean, you embed something, it gets embedded in another code, that code gets embedded in another code, that library spreads over to here, and next thing you know, hey, you got a supply chain attack. So watch out. The University of Darmstadt-Brescia, along with CNET and Secure Mobile Networking Lab, published a paper that provides proof of concept of an attack on Bluetooth on the Wi-Fi chip. Most components in modern systems, A, have Wi-Fi chips, B, have Bluetooth. And all of those things require secure space and secure conversions in order to translate passwords, translate encryption, and do this kind of stuff. And a lot of this is done in a secure area of the chip. So they set this part aside. So here's the problem. In this paper, they discussed how the Wi-Fi chip manufacturers had shortcutted this by collapsing these security areas into a shared space. So that means that the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth and other things that are using this Wi-Fi chip may all be sharing the same secured space. And what this paper has a full, workup on, a proof of concept, is lateral movement in that secure space. So that means you could maybe jump from the Bluetooth across into the Wi-Fi and get things out of the Wi-Fi that were actually being shared in that same space with the Bluetooth. The attacks that result from this could allow code execution, memory dumps, denial of service, and among other things, which included being able to extract passwords and things like that from the memory dumps of the Wi-Fi chip. So, it's pretty scary stuff. The paper reported on 9 different CVEs that went as far back as 2019 related to this attack, and some of these just aren't patchable. Others required either hardware replacement or firmware updates, and not all of them had all that capability. A lot of the flaws are in older devices like, say, iPhone 6s and 7s, and many of the devices on the list are no longer being supported at all with updates or have been end of life. So the recommendations from the author are that if you have these older devices and there's no patch for this, then you probably need to, 1, delete unnecessary Bluetooth pairings, 2, remove unused Wi-Fi networks from the settings, and 3, use cellular instead of Wi-Fi in public spaces. Which anymore, I almost never use Wi-Fi except like in a controlled environment because my cellular is fine. I'm already paying for the data anyway. So I usually just use cellular and stay away from rogue Wi-Fi stuff when I'm walking around because I just turn it off and it makes me nervous to be letting my phone decide it's going to connect to somebody. And there's been a lot of exploits around that. Google pushed out an emergency update for Chrome due to a 0-day that was being exploited. The new version hasn't reached everyone, but it should end in version 1.10 if you are using Chrome. If you don't have it, when you check your version, when I saw this story, I went to check my version of Chrome, and it immediately started the update, and then I had that version. So probably when you go to check it, if it hasn't already updated, it will. The CVE is 4102, so it's been around a while, and it was reported by an anonymous security researcher. It's a use after free. So we've seen these kind of problems before, and it's inside the V8 JavaScript engine in Chrome, where we've also seen other problems in the past. If you don't know what a use after free bug is, it basically can allow arbitrary code execution after something else runs. So something runs, and then there's pointers still out there, and if they can overwrite one of those pointers to have it point somewhere else, then you actually can redirect it to shellcode or downloaders or droppers or who knows what. Google did acknowledge that there were attacks using this going on currently in the wild. They did not provide any other details of what this really entailed, but they said they would release more information when the majority of users had updated their systems. This was the 16th 0-day in Chrome this year. Now, I would say this means it's time to change browsers, but I'll be honest with you. Changing browsers is kind of like changing airlines. The one you're currently on always seems to suck, and the one you're not on seems to suck less. So if you're sitting on the runway, then they've delayed your flight for the 17th time due to not having enough paper towels in the lavatory or one of those other kind of fun things when you're sitting there going, wow, I'm going to miss my international flight, but I hope we get that, the light bulb in the lavatory fixed. But anyway, update Chrome right now if you have it. One of the things I've noticed is that we don't share information very well. This has always been the case just about everywhere. But I mean, when something goes wrong, even if it's just internal, it's really hard to get different constituencies to actually give anybody else information. You know, security doesn't want to tell you what went wrong. Networking doesn't want to tell security what went wrong. Networking doesn't want to talk to the devs because, you know, they don't want to look like they screwed up. The devs don't want to tell the networking people that they screwed up, and on and on and on. But I included this article that was attached here because it actually is a really nice article that provides a lot of details, and including a link to the actual report by PricewaterhouseCoopers on a ransomware attack on the Irish healthcare system that occurred in May. It has details. It's not just one of those like, yeah, we got ransomware. It was you know, an Emotet dropper came in and that, you know, it dropped Ryuk on our system. It wasn't like that. But they talked about how the attackers had access to the systems for nearly 2 months before it was ransomwared, which I call the grenade approach. This is where the Joker's kind of walking away from the scene and sets off all the bombs walking. Remember that scene? In the Dark Knight? Heath Ledger is a great classic scene. But anyway, the report also talks about various warnings that they found in the systems that were ignored. And basically, you know, and a lot of people didn't want to be the center of attention in this. They didn't want to point out things were going on, but they kept detecting like Cobalt Strike and Mimikatz and stuff like that all the way back in March, but they weren't blocking these kind of malicious command execution, and just nobody did anything. You know, it was very interesting. And there's a really nice chart in the article that has the maturity of organizations. Like, when, you know, their very basic side had stuff like the CISO reports to IT, which I always think is a really bad idea, but a lot of people do it. You know, and on and on. So it's an article worth you taking a look at. These particular attacks resulted in $600 million US worth of loss to the Irish healthcare system. And so it's a great case if you want to read or have your management read it or use it as a basis to talk about, you know, some of the security stuff you're trying to put together. Well, back in the 60s, Bill Lumpy Miller started the whole naked beekeeping movement, saying that the stings just hurt less when you're naked in a field with a bunch of friends. Well, Bill may not be with us anymore after that whole beard of murder hornets thing that he tried to do, but our next guest has kept the traditions alive with not just beards of bees, but thongs of bees, bee diapers, and, well, the dreaded naughty bits made of bees maneuver. Welcome, Naturist, Apiarist, Jason Wood.
Hey everybody, it is good to be back with you after a week off. Again, it's nice to be back talking with everybody. I was looking around, you know, what am I going to cover this week? And of course, everything was about Log4j. Every blog post I was looking at was all about Log4j, and I just didn't want to get into it. But I did spot this article that really kind of caught my attention because it sounds really weird, if you will. It's an odd angle here. Basically, in the e-crime ecosystem, they have started to create kind of their own court system or justice system or something like that, which is just freaking hilarious because obviously we're doing stuff that's illegal, but you know, we still need some way to resolve disputes and stuff like that. And so the article is actually in the Daily Swig for portswigger.net. That's their blog post. And it talks about how at least one criminal forum has created a kind of formalized arbitration process to settle different disputes between people buying and selling things that, you know, nobody really wants them doing because it's like, you know, access to environments and exploit kits and ransomware and all kinds of stuff being sold around on here. You know, the idea that there would be arguments and disputes between crooks as they're buying and selling this stuff is really not any kind of surprise. You know, you could end up in a situation. Somebody claims that they're selling you access to this environment and the credentials are all good and stuff like that. You get it. They hand the list off to you, and you find out all the passwords have already been changed, and the remediation has happened. So you basically have bought nothing except a bunch of old usernames and passwords and access points, right? And so you have a dispute over this. How does this get handled? And so basically, you know, again, one forum has decided we're going to handle this. We're going to make it so that there is some recourse for people who feel that they have been wronged in these transactions. Now, the original report was actually a blog post by a company named Analyst One. and they talk a little bit about what's happening in there as well, a little bit more detail than the Ports Trigger blog. Essentially, what happens is they've got a dedicated section in their forum site for arbitration requests, and so if you have, if you're a thief who's been wronged by another thief, you can come in here and create a new thread, and you include something like arbitration or court or something like that to get attention to what's going on here. And you have to provide some information to open up the dispute, which is the defendant's nickname that they go by online, contact information that they have for them. That might be something like a Telegram account or maybe an email address if you have something like that, or a Jabber account. And then you have to provide a briefing of, hey, here's what this claim is about. Here's what went wrong. And you put this in here, and then you include some evidence. This could be things like chat logs and screenshots or what have you. And you put all of that in there. Now, the arbitration side, the forum, has people who are assigned to be arbiters, essentially. They see it, they pick it up, they decide to go ahead and respond to this, and they will turn around, contact the defendant in this claim, and ask for their view. What happened? What's going on here? And they have a chance to respond back and provide evidence of their own to indicate why, no, this is not, this claim isn't valid. Here's what's really going on here and stuff like that. And then they can go along, and the arbiter finally comes up with a verdict. Now, that may be not guilty, or it may be, okay, you're guilty, and plaintiff, the person who was sued in a non-legal format, but sounds like that. You have to provide some kind of restitution, make good on it in some way, or you've done something that is going to end up with you being banned from the forum, or you have to give them money, or what have you. And then the part that I looked at this is like, okay, but how does this forum have any, where's the teeth to this, right? In the real world, you go to court and stuff like that, you win a lawsuit, and let's say the other party doesn't pay out, you can then file another claim or file for garnishment of accounts or whatnot, or seizing assets, and there's teeth to this, right? The law can come in and do this. How does this work in an environment where there is no law? It's just strictly, what people are deciding and what they feel is right in for the given situation. So what this forum is doing basically is, if the defendant doesn't comply, they basically get kicked out. They get banned from the forum entirely, and thereby they're cut off from any kind of future earnings opportunities, right? So, hey, you can pay out a couple of $1,000s to settle this, or we'll just ban you from it and you lose your access to everything that you have here. I just find this to be really wild. The idea of having a court system, if you will, now in a criminal ecosystem. And you're like, what? This just strikes me as just incredibly ironic that, we're bringing the law of their own into this type of environment. How is this being used? I mean, what's the usage of it and stuff like that? Analyst One said that they have observed over 600 threads requesting some kind of arbitration in this forum. And actually, as it's going on, and as the arbiter is working through it, they're conducting kind of like a virtual hearing, if you will, in the forum post itself. Evidence and conversations being exchanged back and forth. Anybody who has access to the forum can actually watch this happen as it's going along. They can comment and maybe vouch for somebody or what have you. And so they can, it's just kind of this back and forth here, which I imagine becomes a complete dumpster fire at times, but it's kind of funny. But it doesn't actually end up having any impact supposedly on the final verdict by the arbiter itself, but it gives this transparency, if you will, of what's going on. The post from Analyst One also makes note that, the median area for costs or fines to settle things is a couple $100 to maybe a few $1,000s. So it's not typically large money, but it obviously can get much larger, or can get larger. Those are just the median. But they also offer an escrow service. So I'm not sure if I will trust this guy. So we'll put this money in escrow, and when I'm happy with the goods, then the escrow service will pay out to the seller ultimately. There is one topic, however, that is completely off limits for arbitration in this forum. And they used to do this, but they don't anymore. They refuse to touch any disputes involving ransomware. It has just gotten too much attention from law enforcement, and they want no part of it. And so they have ruled this out since May earlier this year, 2021. Obviously, the whole idea behind this forum is something that law enforcement would really rather not have in existence whatsoever, but they've only got finite resources and they're going to go after things that they care about, and they're worried about, these folks are worried about ransomware upping their priority for a takedown through whatever means is used to do that. And so they're just trying to stay a little bit lower and stay off of that level of effort. They gave some examples about it. They talked about earlier this year, like in April in 2021. We had two Conti ransomware sued for $2 million in one of these claims, and they ultimately found not guilty, and no money was exchanged or anything like that. But now an arbitration request that occurred for $12,000 in October of this year, that was just declined. They're just not going to touch it no matter what. And significantly smaller amount of money than $2 million of what they were willing to do before. And there are some other examples about this. So yeah, ransomware, just too much heat. We're not going there. Forget it. One kind of amusing side effect that they note or at least was amusing to me, but something they talked about in the blog post, was that some of these folks decide to make it a little bit personal. They get really pissed off at what's going on and how they got scammed and stuff like that. They included a screenshot. It was redacted out, but they gave enough information to show what was the type of information that was being shared. That included the plaintiff's name, or the scammer's name, their address, their phone numbers, names of relatives, their girlfriend, passport information, and more. I mean, they even went after the guy's mom and doxed her information as well. So that was kind of funny, and they left it up there long enough for this firm to actually get a screenshot of it. So that was kind of wild. In the past, we talk about this with the e-crime world, that reputation and getting vouched for by people is kind of how you get around in this and the whole bit. Obviously, though, this has some limits, and it appears that some of these forums are recognizing this. And here you go. We now have a court system for criminals out there and in effect. If you want to check this out, go check out the link in the show notes. That'll take you to Daily Swig, and then you can move on to the Analyst One blog post as well from there. So go take a look. Kind of amusing read.
I guess it's like this is sorry, I'm kind of blown away by that whole idea that, okay, there's sort of an international court for criminal activity, but all right. I mean, I'm
picturing like a bunch of mafioso type of guys hanging around here, and like, so what do you think? Well, I think this guy,
I was trying to buy a dirty bomb on the dark web, and like the guy sold it to me, but it was only like, I wouldn't call it dirty. It was only like a little, dusty. It wasn't a real dirty bomb. It was just kind of a dirty bomb. And I want some retribution here. I want them to give me, I don't want a replacement. I don't want a substitute. I want the original dirty bomb I ordered. And that's all I want. So just give me that and arbitrate it.
Yeah, hilarious.
Yeah, definitely bizarre. All right, thanks, Jason. And finally, Elon still has not sent me the Tesla that he promised. Tesla X, Elon, the one with the carbon fiber wheels. Please, if you could get it here before like the holidays, it would be great. Jeff Bezos has still not sent me my invite to go up on the Great Blue, whatever it's called. But I'm going to keep doing stories about both of you then until you send me what you promised. But Tesla announced that it will start accepting Dogecoin as payment, according to a tweet, which that must make it so, from Elon Musk this morning. In response to this, Dogecoin jumped 18% this morning. So somebody made some money. Of course, an 18% increase on Dogecoin moved it up to like 19 cents, which it originally at one point was 71 cents. And Dogecoin, which started life as a sort of a joke, but Elon does a lot to manipulate Dogecoin and by these announcements and things. So, I don't know. But anyway, Tesla used to take Bitcoin apparently, but they quit because of the volatility in Bitcoin. So, you say I'm going to buy my Tesla with Bitcoin, and then the value of Bitcoin drops dramatically, and all of a sudden, you got a pretty cheap Tesla. But, it could go the other way too. But anyway, Elon Musk is a huge advocate of Dogecoin, and I don't know if it's still a joke currency or it's a serious currency or it's somewhere in between, or maybe we need the court of the internet to rule on this and get an arbitration going. But anyway, once Elon got involved with this coin, it really took off with him advocating for it. So, Elon, about that Tesla, I mean, it is holiday season. Come on, be a mensch. But anyway, that's the news. Thanks, Jason. Thanks to all of you. And I will see you on Friday with the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up.